Am I really concerned when it comes to Polkadot? Because people have been asking me that question. But when I say no, it sounds a little bit kind of comical to some individuals out there because they're like, how can you not be concerned about this? Take a look at it. Polkadot just recently reached a new all-time low, which literally means that it's the lowest it's ever been in history. But still, even despite all that, I'm not concerned. And I'll explain why in today's video. But I first want to clarify, even though nothing I say is financial advice, and even though I'm not telling anyone to do anything, my mindset is more so for the long term. It's not for, a 24-hour basis or a 24-hour timeline, 48 hours, 72 hours. That's not me. What I'm more so focused on is the fundamentals. The thing about Polkadot is this. Yeah, sure, it's on an all-time low, but in terms of its fundamentals, I think it's at an all-time high. The reason why I say that is not just because I feel like it. No, it's because I've taken a look at what Polkadot has been doing so far. Take a look at, for instance, Polkadot 2.0. That's really massive. Through that, there's an aspect of elastic scaling, which is really impressive and is arguably going to help more developers care about this moving forward. So I think it is actually a pretty big deal. Not to mention as well, if we take a look at it, Polkadot not that long ago clarified that indeed 2.1 billion is the maximum supply when it comes to Polkadot. So what does that do? It basically gives more clarity over the tokenomics when it comes to Polkadot. So if I think about it, Polkadot fundamentally improved, the tokenomics have been clarified, and yet it's at an all-time low. I don't have any complaints because if anything, the way I interpret that situation is that this became better, yet it became cheaper. But that's just how this space works sometimes. I mean, I can't control it. But I also want to preface the fact that this video is not meant for, me pulling up a price chart, or the purpose of that, I should say, and drawing some random triangles. That's not me. I mean, there are some other people out there that only purely care about the price charts when it comes to Polkadot, but that's not me. I'm more so on the other end of the kind of story where I do care more so about the fundamentals, the updates, and what's going on. Polkadot, again, they haven't been updating too much as of late, but when they do actually post updates, it's usually more impactful, right? Like Polkadot 2.0, clarifying the tokenomics and all this. And I also take a look at the use case. That's the thing. So this video is more so meant for the more kind of loyal and dedicated fans in regard to Polkadot, the ones that more so care about it in a long-term basis, not necessarily in just, 24 hours or 48 hours or something like that. Again, I am not a trader. That's not what I do. So it's just not my style. I'm more so caring about this in a long-term basis, or for a long-term basis, I should say. But even besides that, why don't I think Polkadot's use case is obsolete? The reason why I don't think it's useless or anything is because Polkadot is focused primarily, historically, it's known for attempting to connect blockchains together. It's focused on something called interoperability. Now, people like to say, who cares about that? Well, apparently, a lot of developers might care about it. Did you know that actually, in terms of development activity, Polkadot constantly ranks pretty highly when it comes to this space? I usually see it like top 10 and all this. So when it comes to Polkadot, again, apparently a lot of developers do care about that because trying to connect blockchains together, that's really impressive, right? A lot of blockchains out there, for the most part, they're kind of like independent of each other. I've seen in some arguable cases. In which case, what that means is that because they're independent of each other, in some cases, they can't freely interact with each other, which kind of greatly inhibits, it kind of greatly prevents mass scale adoption, if that kind of makes sense. Because if there are so many blockchains out there, none of them can really connect with each other. What happens is that it creates an environment where one blockchain is very isolated, the other one is very isolated, and then it kind of doesn't really allow for mass scale adoption. But Polkadot, again, it's trying to connect blockchains together. It's focused on interoperability. That's the thing. Now, people like to tell me that it's kind of a outdated use case, but I disagree because I still see a lot of blockchains out there. I still see a lot of projects out there. A lot of developers out there are still caring about this space, even though it's greatly been reduced. However, there's still a decent amount that still care about this. So again, from what I'm seeing so far, Polkadot doesn't have a bad use case in my opinion. It's just the price charts are not looking good. But when I take a look at, again, Polkadot at its core, it's focused on interoperability. There's Polkadot 2.0, And then also the tokenomics have been clarified. And not to mention, not too long ago, they actually did a redesign in terms of the aesthetics. Previously there was pink in the Polkadot logo. Now they changed it, right? So again, Polkadot has been going through a redesign and an upgrade as well not that long ago. Again, Polkadot 2.0, which is really massive actually. And also Polkadot still has something called Kusama, which is its canary network. Now, a canary network is a very complicated way, or a very fancy way of saying, I should say, basically something like a support system, arguably people would like to say. The reason why I say that, even though actually the proper term is a canary network for Polkadot, but again, the reason why I think about it as a kind of support system is because usually when developers want to launch things on Polkadot, typically they're going to start off with Kusama first, and then after it's good to go, later on they move on, usually to Polkadot. They don't have to though, but usually they do that. They treat Kusama as kind of like the testing ground, and the reason why is because usually it is a little bit more economically friendly to rent building space on Kusama as opposed to Polkadot, and it's also easier to make changes on. So a lot of developers, instead of heading straight onto Polkadot, which arguably could be expensive, they just start off first with Kusama and later on they move on to Polkadot. That's the thing. So Kusama, it's still there. It's still kind of helping Polkadot, maybe not helping too many people out there as of right now, just because, there's not that many developers that are really wanting to enter into this space, even though there's still a decent amount. It's not like there's so many that want to enter because the market isn't doing the best. But if the market does do better, usually they start to want to enter, and Kusama and Polkadot is just kind of waiting right there. Now, also another major concern that some people may have when it comes to Polkadot is the fact that there's only around 2,000 daily active users when it comes to this, which a lot of people find very alarming because they're like, hey, take a look at Polkadot. It's ranked 44th in the world, and there's only around like 2,000 daily active users. That's really bad. They like to say that. But sometimes we have to consider that when it comes to Polkadot, it's not necessarily so focused on just the retail side of things, right? Unlike some other projects out there that make it so that it's an environment where there is a lot of active users, where it's so focused on the retail side of things. Yeah, again, when we compare it to a project like that, it may seem like Polkadot has like almost no activity, but sometimes it's not a fair comparison. It's like comparing the sales number of Toyota Corollas or Toyota Camrys, or let's say Toyota RAV4s, and then having it compared to, like, let's say a Rolls-Royce Phantom. Like, it's not a fair comparison. It has to be an apples to apples comparison. A Toyota RAV4 is selling a lot. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's a really awesome vehicle, in my opinion, a Toyota RAV4. But then if, let's say, I take a look at the Rolls-Royce sales numbers and then I compare it to Toyota, and then I'm like, oh, wow, Rolls-Royce, it's doing like that? What the? Well, but then again, it doesn't tell the full story because they're focused on a different market, segment, right? One's more so focused on luxury, on the kind of high-end market, whereas a Toyota, it's more so meant for a different, again, consumer base, right? So I don't mind, but I love a Toyota. I think it's awesome. I love the RAV4 personally. I also think the Prius is really cool. I think the Prius looks way cooler than the new Ferrari. I just think it looks way cooler than the new Ferrari electric car, the Luce or Lucy. Yeah, I don't know what it's called, but when I take a look at the new Ferrari, I just think the Prius looks cooler. Like, personally for me, I'd rather get the Prius than that. That's just my mindset. I mean, but yeah, besides that point though, when I take a look at, let's say in the case of Polkadot, again, people like to say, oh, the daily active users is only around 2,000 as of right now. It's doing so bad. But again, it's not really comparable to some other projects out there. But nonetheless, if I take a look at it as well, Polkadot, as of right now, is so low to the point that it's well over 10 times lower than December of 2024. Let's just let this sink in, right? In December of 2024, Polkadot was around $10.52. As of right now, we're around 85 cents. Wow. And also, if I take a look at it, not even that long ago, right? If we take a look at, let's say in the case of September of 2025, we're like around 5 times lower than that. Back in September of 2025, this Polkadot was around $4.40. So when I take a look at this as of right now, We're so low to the point that even compared to September of 2025, which by no means was a fantastic time for Polkadot. It wasn't. It was considered a little bit boring and bearish, but still we're around 4 times lower than that. Wow. Bitcoin, it's had a pullback, but Bitcoin is around 4 times lower than September of last year. That's just my mindset. But, when I take a look at all of this, when I take a look at Polkadot 2.0 and the fundamentals that Polkadot has, long story short, I'm not concerned. And I don't mind low prices anyways because I'm looking to hypothetically dollar cost average. Even though I only do it approximately once a month in terms of dollar cost averaging, I'm not going to complain about something that is hypothetically kind of low personally, but I'm not telling anyone to do anything. And one thing I've noticed historically is that typically, a year after a Bitcoin all-time high, usually the market starts to kind of bottom out, and then sometimes we see a slight recovery afterwards. Now, I've noticed that from history. We'll wait and see this time around. However, that's just from what I noticed. We're around 8.5 months removed actually from the Bitcoin all-time high, the last Bitcoin all-time high, I should say. So if history kind of repeats itself, we could very well be seeing another 4 months of boring times when it comes to this space. But you know what? Even if that is the case, I have zero complaints. I'm thinking about this for a multi-year mindset anyways. I'm treating this like a marathon. So if I have to wait another 4 months for things to maybe change, you know what? It is what it is. I can't change anything in regard to that. The only thing I can do is control myself, and that's what I'm going to do. So long story short, I'm not concerned when it comes to Polkadot. However, I'll be sure to make more updates when it comes to Polkadot moving forward. So I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a very amazing day.